Well, I am delighted to have Ron Frank with me here today. Ron and I met. He's a practitioner of Nature Provides, but really, he is a brilliant homeopath. And I've learned a lot about it just in our conversations. And I invited him to be here today to share his wisdom and his brilliance with all of you. Because one of the things that Ron and I have in common are that we love nature and we really understand the importance of having a relationship with nature. So, Ron, welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Jen. I'm glad to be here. Definitely, I'm very excited to talk about our relationship with nature, especially as healing. But nature is really everything, right? We're part of nature. So yeah. So whatever you want to ask, we'll go for it. We'll just see what happens. All right.
Yeah, sounds great. So, you have a great story about your mother-in-law, former mother-in-law,
Oh yeah.
and how you really kind of jumped into homeopathy. So, can you share with the audience what is homeopathy? How is it different? A
Okay.
lot of people work with herbs, but not necessarily homeopathy. And if you can talk a little bit about what it is, how you discovered it, and how, like, what your perspective is on how it brings healing into the person's life.
Okay. Great. Mine was dramatic, right? So you heard the story before, but it was through my mother-in-law. I'd never heard anything about homeopathy. I had no interest in doing any kind of healthcare of any kind. It was not anything on my radar. And so let me actually take this out so I'm not distracted. There we go. Okay, so what happened is I was about to get married, and my future mother-in-law had an incurable blood disease called ITP, and that's idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. It's an autoimmune disorder where her body would attack her own blood platelets. So basically, if it wasn't treated, she was on steroids. If it wasn't being treated, she would bleed out from every orifice of her body, basically even out her pores near the nails of the skin, everything, right? So it was really intense, and she'd had it for many many years, and she'd gone through. I mean, she'd been on steroids, so she was, Cushing syndrome, where she was round like a chipmunk. It was breaking down the bones in her body from the drugs. So she was in a lot of pain. She was also very depressed, even to the point of possibly suicidal kind of thing, right? So really intense. And she was a nurse and she worked in a hospital. So she was, when she talked to me about it, she said, "Well, I'm watching people die from the medications that I'm on, and I know I need to get away from them, but I don't have any choice. Otherwise, I'm in the hospital again with multiple blood transfusions just to stay alive, and then I have to go back on the drugs." And they removed her spleen. They did all sorts of intense procedures to try and stop the problems or the disease from being there. So none of it worked. Anyway, the family here in California heard of a man named Dr. De Silva, Dr. Tenekun De Silva, who was having success with supposedly incurable things, which this was considered incurable. So they flew her out from Arizona. They took her to his little clinic, little tiny office in downtown LA, and he actually took her off the steroids and the drugs in a day, right?
Wow.
Which is not something I would ever do, right?
Unheard
So,
of.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I was like, whoa. So it kind of, it got me a little bit concerned. Of course, I never heard any of this stuff, but I was young, and so it was not like I was going to check him out as a quack, but it was kind of like that a little bit. But I was so young, I didn't really have those kind of like parameters set up yet. Like, oh, this is voodoo. I didn't know what it was, so I figured I'd go in and see. So I hired him just to go through, what I really wasn't sick, but just to see what it could do or what it was about, and for myself. And he gave me some little white pellets, which back then were like, what the heck is this, right? And they're sweet, so I could put them under my tongue, right? This told him to put them under my tongue, sublingually use them. And then I was told to boil my water every day before having it to drink and use, right, for 15 minutes at a rolling boil, as well as changing my dietary habits and everything. And I said, okay, I'll try it, right? my mother-in-law wasn't cured right then and there, right, by him being able to take off the medications. See, she still had very low blood platelets count, but she would just get like flu-like symptoms for about a week every month. But she didn't have to live on the drugs, and she was very happy about that. It stopped a lot of the pain, it stopped a lot of other things that she was suffering, and she was doing much better. So as I went through the process, I saw my skin texture change. I saw things that I didn't know there were things wrong with me, kind of thing. And we went through all that. And then some other things, we sent the future wife in, her daughter in, all that kind of stuff, and saw other things that were actually pretty remarkable as well. She had tons of cysts in her breasts, hundreds, and literally we saw them go away in about 10 days, doing a program with another remedy called Tuya that we use, but coming away from caffeine and all that too is really, that was startling dramatic, right?
Right.
So eventually he actually asked my future wife if I would study with him. He asked for me to study with him. Um, there's a whole story about that, but I'm going to try and narrow it down to just with her. So I decided I would study with him. I told him I would never become a homeopath. Well, he knew better, right? So I told him I wouldn't be a homeopath. I would just want to learn his culture. He's from India, thick Indian accent. It was totally different and foreign to me, and I wanted to see what it was about. So, but he threw me in right away with his clients and everything, and he told me to go and study with the British Institute of Homeopathy, which is just back then it was a mail order. We didn't have email even. Again, dating myself, right?
Yes.
So so I did all that, and then I was reading a book. He'd give me his studies from his lessons from India and all that, but I was actually studying other books. I was trying to figure it out. I didn't understand what this was. So I would go to a bookstore that was loaded with different types of books on homeopathy and other things that were different, called, I think it was Bodhi Tree. It's now not no longer exists down in Hollywood. Um, anyway, the I got a book by Marjorie Blackie. Marjorie Blackie was an MD that was the first female physician to Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family ever.
Mm.
Right. So she broke open a lot of stuff. She was also a homeopath, though. And so she wrote a book I think it's called Classical Homeopathy, just simple. And in the back, in the index, was referenced a remedy for purpura. And I read about the remedy. It's called Crotalus horridus. And I decided, well, this might be worth a try. She's still struggling in terms of she's down once a week every month, right? And maybe we could see if this would change her blood platelets. I needed concrete stuff. Even though I was seeing people get well in his practice, I needed some concrete items to really feel comfortable with it, so that I understood it. So anyway, I asked her to get a blood test. She got a blood test before we tried the remedy. Her platelets were below normal. And then I asked her to try maybe a week later, take the remedy a week later. But she was a nurse, so she went in the hospital and had her blood drawn the next day. And her blood platelets, they jumped to a high normal, and they
Wow.
stayed that way for 3 years without another
From one
dose.
from one dose.
One dose, 6 pellets of Crotalus horridus, bought at a little pharmacy, probably in the little blue boron tubes, right? And she took 6 pellets, and then that her blood platelets on a blood test jumped up, and they stayed that way, and she stopped getting sick every month, right? And to
So then
me,
you had the evidence that you needed.
right, I had the evidence both in on paper from the tests as well as seeing how she responded. And I said, whoa, there's nothing that, I just read it out of a book and I could make that difference. It was the feeling that I could actually do something like that, that it wasn't that complicated. It was just kind of matching up similar symptoms to what was happening, right? So we'll talk about that as part of what's homeopathy, and I'll go back to the story, okay? So the homeopathy is like cures like. That's the simple way that you put it, as Hahnemann put it, the father of homeopathy. It's basically, like if you cut a red onion and it causes you to tear up, then, and also to have mucus out your nose, those are similar symptoms to like a cold or
Mhm.
allergies. And so if you have symptoms similar to that, you would take red onion. We dilute it a lot. We dilute it profoundly. It's hyper diluted. It's extremely dilute. So it's super, super safe. But if it's accurate and if it does match those symptoms really closely, then you don't need something strong. You do something very minimal, and it's very strong in action. So the symptoms will relieve. Now, it's not going to get rid of the allergies permanently, right? Or the cold, it's not going to really just heal it right away, although it might feel that way. You'll get the symptoms relief right away, but you'll probably have to take a few doses over some time as your body actually works through the cold to relieve those symptoms. Now, my mother-in-law was different, and I want to finish the story because it tells you why there's a difference as to how that works. When sometimes you give a single dose and it just disappears dramatically, and then sometimes you have to repeat it over and over and over again for it to just handle the symptoms. And there's a bit of a in homeopathy. I do not believe that most practitioners actually know how the remedies work, even the
So that, yeah, I
homeopaths
want to get to
themselves.
that because I think that's an important piece.
Yes, and I do too. And it took me, over 20 years to really figure it out. Even though I went through this process, I didn't understand it until actually working with people for so long, and then looking back at this incident to understand how it told me the difference of how you really heal people.
And I
Okay.
want to clarify something really quickly, Ron, that when you say like cures like, and you say
Yes.
very diluted, there is no material in the remedy. Is that correct? It's the energy of the remedy.
So that technically the theory, it's Avogadro's number is if you dilute something 10 to the 24th, then there's not a single molecule of the original substance there. Now that they said that's proven, I don't believe it's proven. I think there actually is very, very, very slight amounts that are in there, and also there's material from when you're shaking it that breaks off the vial in the shaking that kind of makes it newly every time. So
Okay.
there's kind of a new substance every time you do it. So you basically shake the vial in it, you violently shake it with an impact. My screen is shaking as I'm doing that, right? So it gives you a good emphasis. So you
And that's
shake it
called
with impact.
succussing. Is that called succussing?
Yes,
Yes.
it's called succussion, or you triturate it if it's really hard in a mortar and pestle for the first few doses until you can succuss it. But so that's succussion. Then you take in what's already made once, you take a drop or two of that, you put it in diluting material again, and you do it again. And you do that however many times you want the strength of the potency. The more diluted it is, the stronger it is for us in action. And there's a reason for that. So again, I don't believe most homeopaths, and again, I don't know all because I don't know what all they've gone through or what they've understood, but I think a lot of them really don't understand how this actually works. So it'd be very useful for them with this. Um, so anyway, we take and then give something that's so dilute you can't. It's gentler than laying on of hands. It's less material involved that's passing between people. It's really, really, really light in what the actual substance is that's coming through the person is actually being exposed to, if any at all. But it can have, again, the more diluted it is, the stronger response that we actually see for a person. So if somebody's in pain and there's an intensity of symptoms, then I will go even more dilute where it's done 200 times, right? 200, even 1,000 times, like a 1M sometimes. They're all done in Roman numerals, so you'll see a C or an X on there. So 10 times dilution, 1 to 9 parts of the diluting material, or C, which is 1 to 100 parts. That's each dilution. So that's what those mean. That's the potency variable. And then the amount of number of times, then that's before that number, the 30 or the 6C or the 30C or the 1M, that's all either a 6 times, 30 times, or 1,000 times. Okay. So a 200C is done 200 times. You take that one drop from the already diluted material, you put it in the next one, dilute it again, dilute it again. The number of that dilution is like 1 part to 1 with numbers, over 30C would be over 60 zeros. It would be 60 zeros behind it, actually. So that's unfathomable. It's beyond a Google. It's beyond anything that we understand in terms of the dilution ratio. It's beyond Avogadro's number, which is 1 to 24. Okay, so got that idea down. We got those. Did that answer the question for you?
It did. And so
Okay,
now
okay,
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat wondering, why do these work? How do they work
good.
with the body?
Okay, good. So let me finish with mother-in-law, and then I can help to kind of pull that apart, and I'll tell why that is through that process a little bit too, hopefully. So so she was good for 3 years, and then 3 years she had a relapse. It just happened to be the very first year of my practice, right? So I just got into practice, quit my job, had no savings, jump out there like I have people supporting me to do so. But it was pretty traumatic already, just trying to leap out there and be a homeopath in a community that knew nothing about it, had really didn't have any exposure to it or barely any, except for the health food store that was here, and trying to set up an office and do all that, right? So I get a call in the middle of the night, and I just remember, it was probably 4 a.m., something like that, or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. And she's on the other side of the phone. Basically, she's dying, right? She's all come back. She's going through violent vomiting and purging. You know, it's, it's an intense pain in terms of a headache because her blood platelets are all crashing. Her blood's crashing. And she's not doing well at all. And she's refusing to go to the hospital. Right. So she won't be put on those drugs again, is how she put it. And I'm sitting there going, I'm supposed to become her homeopath, obviously, from the response of that myself, and having gone through training with Dr. De Silva. So now I'm responsible for this. And this is my mother-in-law, and I have kids that's her grandmother. And, this is just a bit much
It's
for that time
urgent.
of life. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a book written 100 years ago or so or more, called Kent's Repertory is all I had. And took a flashlight out because the middle of the night didn't want to wake the family up, trying to find a remedy out of this old book that would help. And I was matching her symptoms as close as possible. The remedy that came up was camphor. It was the crashing, collapse state condition. Um, and the cold intensity of cold that she was feeling and everything that was in this remedy matched this to the T. So took the and her daughter, actually, my ex-wife, was actually the real hero. She reached out and found her mother's ex-husband's boss, whom she didn't know, to go and wake up and go to the pharmacy and wait there before it opened to get the remedy and take it to her to help her. Right. So she went through all this to get that done, got her the remedy. She took the remedy and she was fine. It stopped the whole sequence of events and she was fine again and no problem, right? I wasn't. The next day was Christmas Eve, and we were driving to go visit my parents and stuff, and I totaled my car. I'm just like, with my family and everything, just, then I get sick and everything else because it's confronting. For me, it was confronting being responsible for people's lives at that level. I hadn't considered really, and here I am, just launched out of my practice. So it was pretty intense for me. It was really intense for me. Got a lot of support though. Got through it, and then I said, "This isn't going to happen again, though. I'm not going to go through this with you. We got to figure out what happened." Ask her what happened. She says, "Nothing. Nothing happened. There's nothing there. The only thing different that I did was I'd gone to the dentist 3 days before." Right.
Oh, okay.
So I said, okay, so this is you in homeopathy, we always ask what happened, right? You always, when something happens that's intense, or when a person starts their ailment, what happens just before that? You want to know about their life. You want to know everything that happened beforehand because that's the setup. We want to figure out all the different triggers, all the different things that may have been involved in this and learn what that's there. And so, that's the basic training that I had. So I said, please just check, see if you ever had any other incidences where, you'd gone to the dentist and you wound up in the hospital shortly after. And she said she went through and looked at it. It was every time she'd gone to the dentist, 3 days later, she was in the hospital.
Wow.
And this is over many years, right? So I said, well, there's our culprit. You're be giving whatever drug they gave you, and she had a couple different ones. One was Valium, and back then in the nurse's PDR, it said you're not supposed to use that with people with blood disorders, right? And which would count. But I think it was actually the lidocaine or novocaine that they gave her, the injection. So she never went to the dentist again for any of those, and she never had a relapse ever again in the rest of her life. And I was her homeopath for, a good decade or decade and a half, maybe after that, or like about a decade after that, actually. So, and then her son also went into alternative health with it and took over from there when I was no longer in the family, right? But through that incident, he was also became a nature, a holistic. I think he went to Ayurveda actually. So, uh, the thing that it taught me though was if you have something that triggers an incident and the body's stuck in its own response, but you don't have something else that's keeping she's not like going to the dentist over and over and over again. If you give a single dose but that pressure is still not pushing her and something's not forcing it to happen again. The single dose works. The single dose will just handle it. So if you're dealing with stuff like trauma in the past, you're dealing with items that are, that the body is in memory about,
Mhm.
been a shock or a trauma, or, trying to defend itself. That's really what it's about. It's in a position where it's defending itself in a certain way, and it won't let go of that for fear of almost dying before, or the pain, or whatever it was that it went through before for the person. A single dose, that's going to make a big difference, right? But, say she went to the dentist again, then I'm going to have to repeat the remedy again.
Right.
Or
So
if
if
there
you
was
have
something,
kind of a big trigger, you can use a single dose. But if you're continuing to expose yourself to that trigger, then you would
yes,
need to repeat the dose. Is that
right, you would need to use the remedy consistently over and over. And basically, what you're doing is you're counteracting that stance the person is in, trying to survive all the time. Because if you're always in the same stance, that's going to eventually become the ailment itself. Right? That is the ailment itself, really. So if you're always surviving, if your body's stuck in surviving in one position, one way of doing that all the time, you can say fight, flight, or hide, or whatever you want to say, but
right?
really the body's choosing a particular response from something. And whatever that is, if it stays in that, it never gets a rest from it, never gets a break from it. It's constantly there. And that's what the ailment is, right? Is that the other relationships in the body can't do other things to take care of itself. The energy is always being used up some one direction. And now you can't get out of that. So that person's stuck there. So remedies can become helpful, even if they're currently in it, but you have to repeat that remedy over and over and over again.
I have so many questions, and I do want to come
Sure.
back to this, how it
Okay.
works. But, we are a society in fight or flight.
Yes.
I mean, so we've got past traumas. Almost everyone has some kind of traumas, right? But then we're working too many hours. We're drinking coffee and alcohol to combat, bring us up, bring us down. We're not
Yes.
sleeping, right? I mean, I can go through all the things. We're not connected to nature. We're sitting at desks, or we're inside. We're not meant to be inside, right? So
Right.
all these things of it's basically our daily lives, how we are living our lives.
Yes.
So how do you address something like that? Because that lifestyle isn't changing.
Yes. Very much so.
So then
And
do
you
you
will see.
constantly take the remedy, or do the remedies morph and change because you get a little bit better, like on the weekends, like your body's like, okay, now I can rest for a minute. And then you're back on the hamster wheel in the morning. So tell me on Monday morning. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay.
And let's talk a little bit about how these remedies work. And then I want to have one last piece about connection to nature.
Okay. You got it. So the actually we'll just leap into the connection to nature if that's okay, right? Our so if there's a pressure that's constant, it's because there's a relationship that's not working with nature.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
help
say if
translate that to somebody like who drinks coffee every day. And they
okay,
drink coffee because they're not sleeping well and they need it to wake up and get their energy going in the morning.
yes, I've had many of those. So how we work with that is they have I start to teach the person, and understand that what their relationship is with nature, but they've got to understand what they're doing to themselves first, right? And they understand, why are they drinking the coffee. So anything repetitive over and over and over, we talked about this, you and I, a lot, but maybe somebody here hasn't. So if there's something hitting us repetitively over and over and over again without the rest or the break, that relationship is always bad. That's going to take us down, right? So
Right.
you could say, well, as a practitioner, you say, hey, okay, let's take the coffee out, give you more of a rest or a break. Let's not do it as frequently. Maybe let's take it down to half what you're doing until you can bleed it off to where it's only once a week that you're doing it, something that's normal. And you will see results from that. You will see results from that. But there's another side of it too, right? The other side of it is, why are they doing the coffee? Like you
Right.
said, I literally had a client say, I hate the taste of coffee, but I take it because I'm going to lose my job if I don't get to work and I'm awake and able to function. Right. literally tell me that. I go, why do you drink it? Yeah, I hate it. I don't touch it anyway.
Right.
Right. So, it has tons of chemicals. It's from South America or somewhere where we don't use those chemicals anymore, but they spray it on the crops. It's really bad for us in the majority of the time, right? Not everything's just bad for us because it's coffee. It's bad for us because of the way we use it and the relationship and how we abuse the plant, right? But it's not bad in general. It's just part of nature. So, changing the relationship though can make a big difference. But why do they have to do that? So this person feels they don't have enough energy at all to, be able to function at work. So they drink the coffee. There was one guy that worked at Home Depot. He literally would fall asleep standing
Oh my
in the Home
gosh.
Depot aisle. He was an employee. He would fall asleep standing, and his boss caught him one day. He was
Wow.
asleep standing in the aisle, standing,
Wow.
right? So he hires me. And we basically said, well, we got to get away from the coffee, pull away from the coffee. We did actually, I was doing gemos back then. We did some black currant, some other gemos, as well as some Nux vomica and items to help him deal with letting go of the coffee and all that stuff. And he was able within 3 months to, totally be awake, didn't need any coffee, and was great at his job and didn't lose his job, right? So anyway, the point being is that you have to teach them, though, it's not just the coffee. There's something that's causing you to use the coffee. Now, his fear of losing the job or not having enough physical energy himself, that he wouldn't be conscious enough to take on his job or be awake, had him using more coffee, although it didn't work for the Home Depot guy.
So
So
what would you say to somebody who says, I just love the ritual of coffee. I love the way it smells, it tastes, it makes me happy. So it's more of an uplifting emotional aspect versus a fearful aspect.
right. So So I would say, so again, there's difference what I would say when somebody come in the office and difference what I'm going to say to make an impact now, right? So I would say you're addicted now, right? You're addicted to coffee because what coffee does, again, it's not broccoli, it's not carrots, right? It's not something that's healthy for you. It's literally killing cells here to distract you from feeling something here. So I would work with the client or the patient really gingerly and carefully and slowly. And when they're ready, not in terms of my saying, "Oh, you got to go with the coffee." That doesn't work, right? They have to make that choice themselves. You say, "Listen, let's just try letting it go some, just reducing it. I don't want you to stop at all because it give you headaches, it can constipate you because coffee helps your bowels move. It's got some benefits, right? And part of your body is really relying on, it, especially your emotional self, is really relying on this thing. So we
Right.
don't want to just take it away from you and shock your system and say that's going to make you better. That's not the way to do it. The way to
Yeah.
do it is say, let's go slow, let's start pulling it back, and let's see what comes up, what you feel, what's actually going to be there. And then we'll use some remedies to help tone that down, as the antidote to that, because that's your survival stance, right? So we'll use some remedies to help tone that down. We'll give you some support from other nature parts of nature, like the black currant, maybe red raspberry, maybe something else in there that's generally going to support the person, uplift their mood so they can get through this without it being traumatic, right? So we give them some support, some natural, supports, some friends, and then we walk them back, and then we see what comes up. And as they tell us what's coming up, then we start to address that specifically with them. But those feelings will come up at some point, and they're going to be blatant.
Mm.
And then either you can do a homeopathic remedy because it might be some trauma from the past, right? And you
Yeah.
might get away with a single dose, then finding out, that person's constitutional, as we'll call it. Or you may have to do something repetitively just to help mitigate the symptoms because you don't see the remedy that comes up for that traumatic experience in the past, or they're being pressured currently, constantly, usually in multiple ways for many of them, right? And then you got to kind of work with those and antidote those pressures so they get rest from them, they get break from them because they can't peel it off all at once.
Right.
So I do wind up using more than one remedy with a person. I also try to teach them that they have certain remedies that are handling certain positional ways of survival for them. So they have friends, they have tools that they can actually take home and don't need me to help them get through that process.
Right.
So,
Amazing. And
yeah.
so how do they work?
So the remedies themselves, how they work? Okay.
Yeah.
So we kind of understand herbalism, right? You and I in particular with the gemotherapies, there's actual constituents in there. but I'm sure that even the way that you and I see those, we see them as friends. We see them as conscious beings, really, right? With energy and life. So it's going to be different than what somebody else outside this conversation that's not a practitioner, or that's not maybe a practitioner that's very, scientifically oriented, or they just want to see the results of that, what it does chemically. That's going to be a lot different in that. This is relational. Nature is a relationship, and everything about health is relational. And relationships rule the chemistry. It's not the chemistry who rules the relationship. We think chemistry rules the relationship because we can poison ourselves and die. But that's just because it's a real intense thing, right?
Right.
But if it's over time and it's small amounts, or we're living, in a normal lifestyle, we're not just being poisoned or shot or something like that that's real intense, then definitely the relationship always controls the chemistry, it controls the mechanics, and it controls the quote warlike responses of, like, viruses and bacteria. So the relationship is everything. And I gave you just a minute ago one thing where, if it's a constant repetition without a rest or a break, that's a bad relationship. That's always going to take us down. If we have an impending thing where we can't build up afterwards, you can just think of, like, bodybuilding, working out, right? If you just work out without ever a rest, you kill yourself, literally.
Right.
But if you rest in the rest period, if it's long enough, right, you build up stronger than you were before. So literally what you're doing is you're telling, like a substance like gemotherapy, I'd say you're telling the gemotherapy where to go, which was what I love, right? That's the relationship. You tell it by use. You got a lymphatic tumor. Okay, well, then you're going to need to move. You upper half, it's up here, lower half, it's down there. You need to move that particular area while I give you this boxwood, or I give you this other, sweet chestnut, or something that's going to work in that lymphatic area. You want to get to that lymphatic area. It's not going to go there unless you actually use that area. Okay, because
Right.
it'll move, tells it where to go. That's a relationship, right? And I don't know that most herbalists actually know that necessarily, right? Or people who use them.
Certainly don't talk
Homeopathy.
about it or teach about it.
Right. They don't talk or teach about it maybe as well. They might. I mean, a lot of them might actually really know that, right? They might have known it before me. So the homeopathics are completely different, though. They're not that relationship. Their relationship shows more like my mother-in-law, where she went to it, she was in a survival thing and it just shut it down. So it is still a relationship, though, and I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is exactly now. So I like skiing, and I like, going down the slopes, and sometimes I like to go really fast. I usually do circles and all sorts of stuff just to play, out there to have fun and find out what I like. But if I start charging off that mountain, I go really fast. I'm enjoying it. What happens if I hit a patch of ice, right? I don't go faster. I mean, maybe I should. Maybe I should slide into it more or something, but I don't go faster. I go, whoa, I'm out of control. I don't have control. So I don't even think about it, but I stop my body and I slow down or I stop until I am in control, and then I go again, right? So, like, once I'm in control, once I know I'm in control, I'm in good shape. That's what your body is. Your body inside, if it knows it's in control. So say, it's reacting to a cold or a flu, or it's running from a bear, whatever it is, whatever that pressure is, it's running in that way. If it's in control, it's going to keep doing that. It's in control. It knows it can handle it. It's going to do that. But as soon as you give it a shove in that same direction from the outside, it's no longer in control. And what's it going to do? It's going to stop.
It's going to rest. It's going to stop.
It's going to stop, or even turn around the other way and face that and say, well, I can't do that, because if I'm being pushed that way and I'm going that way, it's going to kill me, right? So a remedy, what it is, the reason it can work is, the other part is, less is more. Less is more is not possible unless you have something that's similar,
Mm.
that's going the same way the body's already going. Otherwise, it needs to be more and more. You have to distract it. You hit it over here harder, so you stop it from over here. That's drugs, right? That's bloodletting. Bloodletting was you cut a vein open until the person passes out, basically faints, and then you stop that. It's a more life-threatening issue to the body, so the body can't do with the symptoms it was doing before and has to face that. That's what we do with coffee. That's what we do with alcohol. All those have to be more life-threatening over here to distract and move it over here. So more is more. More actually forces it. And it's literally more violence, right? That we do here, the more distraction, the more successful it is to remove the symptoms away over here. Whereas homeopathy, less is more. Why is less more? Well, when we succuss the remedy, we're shattering it, right? We're making it smaller, finer pieces, and it goes in quicker. It's like a shot. If you take and inject somebody, it goes past the skin barrier, it goes past, it goes really there. Those little tiny fine particles. It's like, glass. I have a window right here next to me. I'm not afraid of the glass. But if something comes up and shatters that, I'm terrified right now. I'm barefooted. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to tell you that, but I'm barefooted right now,
So am
right?
I.
So are you. See, there you go. I did my run this morning. I'm barefooted. I'm not going to be unless I have to. Anyway, so that I'm barefooted, and that glass would be a threat. So what happens if you push the body in the same direction with something that says, hey, something bigger's coming. This is the fine particles. There's something bigger coming. It slipped through. It got injected. It came through. It's a threat that's going to push the body the same direction. It's going to go, oh, no, we can't do that. We have to actually go the opposite way and defend ourselves from what's coming.
Mm.
So the homeopathic remedy is just a threat, but it doesn't have the actual substance to poison, to do the harm, or anything else like that. That's why it has to be like cures like, for less is more. And again, most homeopaths that I've never, I wasn't, I can't say most homeopaths, I wasn't trained that way to understand that. I wasn't
Right.
understand that it's a relationship issue. And again, I don't necessarily believe how they say that it's proven now that Avogadro's number is, there's nothing left, because it's not just diluted so much with that amount, with that thing one time. It's diluted over and over. So really a new substance is made each time, including the fine particles from the glass that break off. So I want that to be very clear, because someday we are going to look at those fine details and find them important.
Right.
We want to be scientific about it, which is really understanding what's happening, not just making stuff up and thinking, oh, it's a spiritual response, or oh, and again, I don't separate spiritual from physical, to be honest with you. So it is
Because
a spiritual response
it's all
too,
it's
right?
all the same, or it's all another layer of the same
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. And at what point would you call it not spiritual and
Right.
it being spiritual?
Not not
Yeah.
physical.
How are you
Yeah.
going to separate that? Right. It's really,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, I love that. And so I want to end with a couple of things. For the pills, the remedy in the pill form, you
yes.
discuss that, or do you only do it for the liquid
Oh
homeopathic?
yeah, when it's in a solid form, I don't usually succuss it. It wouldn't hurt if you did that. It's
Okay.
fine. Sometimes I find myself doing it just
Doing it
because,
just okay.
yeah, just out of the heck of it. But so that changes it, right? So again, if you have the same thing hitting you all the time, eventually you can become resistant to it. That's even with the remedies, right? Your
Right.
body can build up a resistance to it. So if you're using it repetitively for a reason, but if you change it, that's why I put most of my remedies are in liquid. If you change it with succussion again a little bit, you're shattering it more. So it has a lot of people say it's a different energy, a different frequency. So just a little bit off of what it was before, and there's less chance the body's going to resist it. It'll respond to it better, right? But if you can also see that if it's shattered more, that might be more of a threat, so it can respond to that and get that communication. To me, it's a communication of a threat potential, just like a drug would be a threat, but a real threat, or alcohol or caffeine. Again, those aren't broccoli and carrots, right? Chemotherapies are broccoli and carrots. So
Yeah,
anyway,
and I think what you teach is so important because, we're living in a mindset of just give me the one thing and it will, and fix me, having
yeah,
something outside of ourselves fix us. And
right,
relationship, we're so used to give me the protocol. And I even work with practitioners like that. Just give me the protocol. Tell me what to give the person. And
yeah,
it's like that is, I think, the old way. That's the unconscious way. The conscious way is no, empowering our clients to then say the remedy is yours, form a relationship with it, pay attention to how your body changes, how your symptoms change. You look
yeah,
as an ally, your friend who is here to kind of guide you on that journey to make changes. And it goes so beyond the remedy. Like you said, it's lifestyle changes. It's really understanding, how we're treating our bodies, how we're perceiving our bodies, all of our
Yeah.
bodies, and all
Yeah.
that. That's one of the things I just, am so drawn to you about, because we have that in common of
Yes. Thank you.
this relationship
Yeah. And giving it away,
and giving it away. Yes.
right? Instead of maintaining it as the practitioner, as I'm the expert. No, no, no.
No.
You're the expert. You feel it. So
Yes.
here, you see, don't believe what I say. Try it out yourself. See if the relationship works for you, because we know that not every relationship works for every individual, right? And there's a reason for that. So you try it. See if you can make this your friend. And if you make it your friend, it's gonna be different than mine. It'll act differently for me. It'll still be might be similar, but it may not be. It may be completely different. I've had people respond to remedies, use them for completely different reasons that I've never seen, even after 30 years of working with them. They still find things for me that, oh, I didn't see that potential, and but that's their friend. And their friend told them to use it this way and it worked that way. And now I can learn from that and say, well, let me see if that works in other places, myself or somebody else or an animal or whatever, right? But yeah, I thank you again. That's why I'm really grateful to come on and do things like this with you, because I don't, again, I was trained mostly by medical doctors who also became homeopaths, which is fantastic, right? They really took risks that I didn't take starting my practice by far. So I have great respect for them, right? But sometimes there's that protocol mindset, that the functional medicine kind of mindset kind of thing, where you have this to fix that still, and really isn't that at all. It's really you develop a relationship, and they may not be the first time you take it. It may
Right.
not just be that one dose. It might be something you have to take and really feel for a while, or maybe you don't even feel it while you're taking it, but when you stop it, you go, "Oh, that was helping." I get that a lot, right?
Yes.
Oh, that really was helping. Can I bring that? They ask me, can you bring that back in? Because I take things away a lot of times just to test it, see that it's really making the difference I think it is for the person. And then we learn, and then they say, sure, yeah, now you know how it affects you. You know how to feel that. And when you need it, I don't need to tell you anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah, thank you.
amazing. Empowering people, right? Helping
Yes,
them
big time.
form,
And their
inviting
relationship
them.
with nature, right?
Yes, inviting
Knowing that it's
them to
nature.
form a relationship.
Yes. So yeah. So
So,
thank you.
yes, well, thank you so much. I know you have a physical practice in Palmdale, California.
Yes, right on Palmdale Boulevard, 950 East. Yeah.
Okay, but you
Yeah.
also work remotely. So,
Yes, I have
how
people all
can
over the
people find
country,
you?
and
How can people find you?
well, the office number is great, 661-274-4449. Or the website is also, it's not my favorite thing to use going through the website, but it is classichomeopathy.com. So they can reach us or reach, my office through that.
I have a
Yeah, but
feeling you'll be getting some phone calls and some emails.
okay.
The result.
I've got enough
Buckle
already,
up,
but
Ron.
we'll do our best.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you so much for sharing your incredible wisdom. I'm just in awe of you, and I'm so grateful that I got to meet you in person. What a privilege. And that
That's
we'll
that's
continue
mutual,
to,
definitely mutual. Okay, and
yeah,
I'm really in awe of you bringing us new remedies and gemotherapy in particular. I can't tell you how appreciative I have to be able to explore new friends in that manner. We're using the germinating parts of the buds and the rootlets and the sap and of these plants that I haven't even thought we could use that where hadn't had access to it. So again, I
well,
really
in
appreciate
about 3 weeks, you're going to have pomegranate and feverfew. So
it. All right.
it'll be on its way. So you'll get to have two new friends. Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for taking time out, and just such a privilege and pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. You too. Definitely.